This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment mentor for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Now here is today's episode. Episode 104. If you find yourself often overwhelmed and stressed out, I encourage you to go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end-overwhelm and watch my workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm and live a more balanced and connected life as a highly sensitive woman entrepreneur. Now here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. Oh my goodness. My next guest, I'm so excited to talk about, and her and I were just sharing how I could just talk with her for hours on end. So I cannot wait to introduce you to my guest today, who is Penny Pierce. And she is a respected clairvoyant, empath, visionary, author, and popular lecturer and trainer. For well over 30 years, she has taught and counseled thousands of people internationally in all walks of life. She is one of the early pioneers in the intuition development movement, specializing in expanded perception, inner energy dynamics, dream work, and transformation. She helps leaders, professionals, artists, and those on a spiritual path discover the hidden dynamics of what makes for true success. Penny is the author of 10 books, including Transparency, Leap of Perception, Frequency, and The Intuitive Way. Penny's work is open-minded, practical, and sophisticated. She synthesizes diverse culture and spiritual worldviews with many years of experience in business as a corporate art director. Her long-time focus on the dynamics of consciousness and energy gives her deep psychological understanding, expertise with natural laws, and a designer's skill in bringing higher thought into form. She is known for her ability to present complex ideas in a common sense, easy-to-understand way. Penny was educated at the University of Cincinnati, the New School for Social Research in Columbia, and California Institute of Arts. She lives in Florida. And I first heard about Penny on someone else's podcast, which then led me to some of her books. And I recently finished her book on transparency. And Penny really does take these complex things and synthesizes them down with beautiful questions and information. It's just been great. And I wanted to have a conversation with her to not only discuss kind of the intuition, but using the left-right brain, horizontal versus vertical, transparency, and so much more. But before we dive into these topics, first I want to say, Penny, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It just sounds like it's right up my alley.
I think it is. Well, I wanted you to share with my listeners, what was the moment you decided that you no longer wanted to be this corporate art director and begin to write books and do lectures and really start the movement to bring intuition more into the mainstream?
You know, it wasn't just a moment. It was, my father was a corporation president, and I was the oldest child, and I was kind of expected to go that way, I think. And I thought I was. And it sort of gradually, I lost interest in that, and I started to, because I always had this little sub-theme of fascination about psychic things. And I read a lot of books in high school and just constantly interested in, I guess it was higher consciousness, really. And as I, grew, I started having experiences along those lines in my own life, but also meeting fairly well-known teachers and working with them a little bit, but not thinking I could do any of this, but I just kept going and going. And that theme got stronger and the business theme kind of faded down. So they kind of replaced each other gradually until I got laid off from my art director job when they got a corporate takeover. And I was on unemployment, and I started a freelance business doing graphics. And at the same time, I found out I could study to become a clairvoyant. This was, of course, in Marin County, California, where all that kind of thing was happening. And I had never thought, gosh, you could study, you could learn this. And it was fascinating. And once I got into those classes and I found out that the things I was seeing in my mind's eye were actually pertained to other people's realities. Like if I was reading somebody, I'd see an image of a ballerina or something and she'd say, oh, I studied ballet when I, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? That this was actually real. And all of that inner world stuff started to become very real to me. And at that point, the fascination was so high, that I just saturated into it. But then I had my own business. And so I was still doing business and I was still doing design for other businesses. So I was still in that mode, but bringing that non-physical stuff in at the same time, I guess. So it kind of was a merger of the two without me even realizing what I was doing. It's like something inside of us, I think, takes us on our path. And I think we get bored at a certain point and move on to another thing that's more interesting. Because I always say I kind of zigzagged into the place where I am now, back away, go forward,
Yeah, I could resonate with that for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to trust your desires and I think be a little bit selfish in the early stages and say, well, I want what I want. I want to do what I feel like I want to do. And, I don't know.
And I want to touch on that for just a second, because I think for some women that has been really kind of dismissed or put down like, nope, this is what you need to do. And those voices can get silenced.
Yes.
So you're not mindful with that.
Yes. I think you're so right. And sometimes it's a pretty big shift actually for people. For me, I'm a double Leo. Maybe that's part of it. Also, when I was in the early years of college, I went on a march to, against the war and all this stuff. And my father found out about it and then basically disinherited me. So I was on my own. I went off to New York City, and somebody once told me later that was the equivalent of a near-death experience for me. But I don't know. It's sort of like I just got propelled into these things, which developed my independence, and from that point on, I just, whatever, I'm just going to keep on going toward my interests. And, it's so funny how the early interests you have sometimes you kind of have a sense they're not going to be the real ones, but you need to do them anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to morph at some point into something else, but stick with the program, stay in the moment, do what's coming, and it will automatically, when it's time, change into the next thing.
Well, and I like what I'm hearing is like there's this intense curiosity and not wanting to be bored, that it's like, I'm going to follow that curiosity and see where it leads me. And the more you did that, the more things really opened up in your inner world, your own consciousness, and tapping into these other kind of realities of things. And you didn't stop there, which then continued to blossom, which, I mean, your books, they're so full of just incredible information and how we can each really grow these things and tune into them.
Yes. A lot of it is attention, right, to what's happening. And I think I developed that bit by bit over the years. Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious, Penny, I want to talk a little bit about this. And I know some of this is from the book Transparency, but we're going to kind of tap on a lot of your different topics through your books that you've written too. And, a lot of the women that I work with are high achievers. And you and I were talking about this on a different conversation. And I said, I know for myself, over the years, I have absolutely gotten in my own way where I stop the flow. I stop myself from actually following that curious place. And oftentimes it's fear or trying to, stick within the constructs that have been given to me or our culture or whatever. How do you help women really start to understand what flow is and really stay connected in those moments that they keep coming back to the flow versus letting fear kind of get in
Yeah.
the way of where they need to go.
I think part of it is learning to recognize certain states in your body. I talk a lot about your truth signal and your anxiety signal in working with intuition. And, when you hear something that's true, there's a certain sensation that people have, and it's different for everybody. There are a number of these. Some of them are like, oh, I got chills, like
Mm-hmm.
goose flesh run down my arms, or bubbling feelings, or warmth, or spreading warmth, and then the anxiety feelings, there's like a whole pit in your stomach, feeling nauseous, even getting cold. But generally, that is a fear reaction where you're contracting your energy into a kind of self-protective mechanism. It's like you're
Mm-hmm.
curling up in the fetal position or something.
Yeah.
And you get dense. When you contract, and you can feel it in your body when something does that, you get solid almost,
Mm-hmm.
no flow. And when you go into that state, you do not get insight from your own highest place, your own soul, or whatever the collective consciousness. You're getting often information from your left brain about what happened in the past, and then projecting that
Yeah.
onto the present moment and trying to act from that when it may be totally inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're in your truth state, and you're expanded and open, and energy is actually starting to flow and also align. Because
Mm-hmm.
some people describe to me that when they're in their truth, it's like they do this gesture with their hands where they take them from outside and they pull them together along the center line of their body and put them together, and then they drop them down. It's like
Yep.
click or clunk, like
Yep.
things come together, get aligned, and settle.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that state, suddenly energy flows.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have flow, then you can get information from, your true place. And you
Yeah.
don't go into fear, and you don't backslide into other things that you used to know. You just let yourself discover things in the present moment.
Well, and I was going to say, and I know in many of my podcasts, whether I'm speaking with other guests or solo ones, I talk quite a bit about getting out of your head and more tuning into your
Right.
body. So that totally makes sense that when fear is there, that constriction, and you block everything. And then when you're truly in flow, in that intuitive kind of what is that, the vertical kind of state of being?
Well,
Of
I call it now more spherical.
spherical.
The
Okay.
thing about getting out of your head is really getting out of your left brain. So
Yes.
remember, the left brain is the logical place where you have language and things get defined and crystallized, and you have beliefs and proof and all that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And the right brain, which is also the mind, right? It's also the
Mm-hmm.
head, is the place where there is no language, but there is a direct immersion into life. Everything
Mm.
is interconnected. And when you go into that place, and you can access it through meditation and being quiet, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the only way you get into that is by stop talking. Be silent, drop in, be there for it's being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Drop in, and then as you sit there long enough, it starts to open up and open up and open up, and you become very spacious, and then you're connected to the imaginal realm and to the unified field, and everything is there. And then that place starts to source you, not your past or not other people's ideas. So the idea of recognizing your own truth, like you said, how do you get out of the shoulds?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the
Mm-hmm.
shoulds and the yes buts are all in your left brain.
Makes sense.
So the minute you can stop the internal dialogue and get centered into what I call your home frequency, which to me it's like your preferred state,
Mm-hmm.
a state of being where it's the soul in the body, basically,
Mm-hmm.
like a child playing, like playing with a puppy, whatever. Just you feel good, you feel open, you're curious, you're willing to be surprised, you're enjoying yourself and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just this really wonderful state. So when you can get recentered into that and relax, everything opens up again. So
Beautiful.
getting out of those shoulds and that early programming, I think, is a matter of learning to discriminate those subtle states of being. Am I in a reaction and I'm contracted and I'm back in old belief systems that I probably got from my mother or father or aunt or teachers? Or am I just in the present moment allowing myself to know what I need to know right now? And so we can learn to do this, but it takes practice.
Yes, there it is. That's what I was going to say. You're giving some beautiful questions of how women can start to discern those moments. But it is a practice that some places you may be in your life where it's like, oh, that's really easy. Yep, I'm totally in flow. And then other times, if you're adventuring into something new or it's challenging you in a different way, that's where it's staying very curious and pausing versus reacting into it.
That's it. Yeah. And I think that it is just like building a new habit or a new muscle that, it's okay to choose what feels good.
Yeah.
I always say like, self-entertainment is a very high state. And
I like that.
because when you are having fun at what you're doing, you have clear thinking. You're not trying to avoid something that could be possibly painful. You're just interested in things.
Yeah.
And part of staying in the flow is letting the flow bring you and materialize anything. And then making a decision almost that whatever shows up is what I need, or I'm showing this to myself, actually.
Yeah.
So why? What's the message in it? What am I trying to show myself here? And you dialogue with it, you engage with it. And if it's a snag or some situation where, you got cheated and lost money or something, and it's upsetting, you say, okay, it's just another experience. Now let me go into it and see what was it in me that is just like that situation.
So it's not making yourself right or wrong.
No.
Again, it's staying in that place of curiosity of help me understand, or what do I need to get from this thing that's going on right now.
Yeah. And I always talk a lot about, I call it the law of correlation, because there's really is no outside world. It's all you, but at different frequencies. Okay. So your inner world, the non-physical, is the realm of thought and ideas and feelings and patterns of knowledge. And then the physical world, or what we call the outside world, is really not outside because we're continuous, but it's at a slower frequency. And so things in that part of ourselves look like form, right? They're physical shapes and space with air in it, and which is a thing too. So whatever's happening on the inside is also happening on the outside because there's no separation. There's no difference. So it's kind of a game I play. It's like, well, an event happens in the outside world. That's my physical self out there in the big world, showing up as events. But then there's a matching thought pattern inside that allowed me to notice that event or have it happen in my world. So then I look at that and I say, it might not be the exact same shape or form, but there's an underlying idea here that probably isn't true for me. If it makes me contract, if the experience that happens makes me contract, then the inner idea is probably not accurate in terms of the way, let's say, the universal laws actually function. Right? So then I can look at that and I can say, aha, I see. So let me correct that. And after that, once I understand it, it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. And I love what you're talking about. What, again, you and I were kind of chatting about before I hit record is we're talking about this as like the spiritual practice, right? That staying curious and things being in alignment, that you can do this in your relationships. You can do it in your business. You could do it in every aspect of your life. It's staying in that place and what do I want to say? Like, yeah, keeping, I guess, your frequency high and or learning in it, but not being so stuck in the left side, which, like you're saying, is there's where all the beliefs and things are stuck.
Right. And all the perception of potential dangers. Like, because, the left brain has made definitions of things that it's observed, and then it makes rules out of those. And then it doesn't want to change those because it would be dangerous. Yeah. So it's like the left brain is sort of a protector, or thinks it is. And it controls things. And then if we identify with the left brain, we become that way too.
Yeah.
And then we hear the word spirituality and think, oh, that is wimpy. That's, those people who think they're spiritual, they just don't know anything, And so we have to understand that the real true power and knowledge comes from the right brain and from intuition. Intuition is the power of accessing higher knowledge. The left brain is the ability to recognize that.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that, the function of the left brain is to interrupt the right brain because otherwise you wouldn't be able to know anything. There would be no individuality. Everything would just be all part of the big field.
Share just a little bit. I guess there's two questions I've got for you, but first I want you to share what you mean by the field. Yeah, just share that, what you mean by that.
Well, the unified field, of course, it's a physics thing too, but when you meditate, for instance, you close your eyes and you can put your attention inside your body and you can feel the vibrations and you can feel things moving around. And then if you drop down below, like your organs and your muscles, you can feel your nerves. And then if you go below that, you could feel, if you want to, you can feel your molecules and even go down into the atoms. And you're in a particle-based little reality where everything is made of particles of atoms and neurons and so forth. And then if you go to your skin and beyond the skin, the atoms and particles are still there. There's actually no dividing line. All there are different frequencies of resonance.
Yeah.
And then if you go into the tree out in the yard, and it's vibrating at a different level, but it's still composed of the same particles. And then if you shift a little bit out of the physical particles, you actually in your inner world will go into particles of light and energy. And so there's a very fine line when you get down to that very deep level between energy and form. And that's what you start to deeply understand when you meditate or you work with your inner reality a little bit. You start to sense this as that we just constantly are rocking in and out of form, no form. Form, energy consciousness is one realm, form is the other. And so we're always materializing ideas or dematerializing ideas all through the power of attention. Attention, not intention. Attention is in the present moment. When you place attention on and in something, like a new idea, and keep paying attention and go deeper into it, pretty soon you actually merge with it. So, empaths and highly sensitive people are very good at this. We can merge with things very easily. And then if you really merge, you know that thing as yourself from the inside. And you know all about it because you've just become it. And you can speak as that tree or hummingbird or whatever, or client, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you can pull your attention out of something and get bored with it. And it will seemingly dissolve or leave your reality.
Yeah. This leads me then to my next question then, because you just tuned into that with being an empath and highly sensitive. How do you then help people who are empaths and highly sensitive not get so overwhelmed or flooded by when they merge? Because I hear that from some of my clients. It's like, it's so much. I can just feel everything. And there's different techniques that I help them with. But I'm curious, how would you kind of help those that are like, but how do I want to do this and I want to be, hone these skills and these traits that I have and not be flattened by them with everything that's going on.
Yeah. A lot of us started off being highly sensitive, but then with the energy accelerating on the planet, we're becoming even more so. And other people who weren't aware of being sensitive are now becoming empathic. So it's kind of a thing. Now, it used to be, what did Elaine Aron say, 20% of the people? Now I'm sure it's way more than that. But so what I've learned to do, a couple things, is that, again, we have this unconscious idea that we have an inside and outside world and that the other people are over there. And so when you start to get information, let's say, you will unconsciously project yourself over into another person.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you abandon your own center.
Yeah.
And so you can take on other people's information and patterns and characteristics in order to get data. And then you forget to come back to your own self and check it out. Say, well, okay, well, I see how they're doing that. I see how that works for them, but do I like it? Would
Mm-hmm.
that work for me? you know?
Yeah.
And so this is an oscillation process too, where we don't actually leave ourselves ever because you can't. You're always in
Mm-hmm.
the center of yourself. But you can
Mm-hmm.
expand your ball or bubble around you to include other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then all you have to do is place attention on them and you start to get information.
Beautiful.
At the same time, you're still in yourself. So you're
Yeah.
doing two things at once.
It's the both and.
It's not the either or, it's the both and. When
Mm-hmm.
you keep in your own center, you will not feel drained and overwhelmed because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to return to your home frequency. And then with your left brain, say, look at what I just observed. This is data. And what do I make of this?
Mm-hmm.
What does this tell me about that other person, and if they're reliable or if they had a hard childhood or if they're sick or whatever? And process it then. Use it.
Mm-hmm.
Make it practical. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we have often this idea that when you match somebody else who is suffering, and then you feel like you're suffering because you've taken on their energy. Then
Yeah.
you feel like you have to rescue them or fix them or help them because you don't want to feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it takes on an extra pressure on you to do, all this, helpful work in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't respect the other person's reality.
Yeah.
So there's something here too about, yes, you can pick up that they're hurting and that they may need some information or some perspective perhaps, or a hug.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you can offer, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can ask if they would like some help, but you
Yeah.
can respect their own right to feel the way they are feeling or they're choosing to feel even in an
Mm-hmm.
unconscious way.
Yep.
So that's part of it too, is take off that responsibility that we often have but basically it's, in a way, it's an odd selfish thing because we don't want to feel bad.
Right. Yeah, I had a conversation with another guest when we were talking about shamanism and picking up on other people's sufferings and hurts. And it's like, whoa, nope, it's not my job to fix that for them. Like you're saying, it's really being respectful of when they're ready, they will, or if they want to, they will. And if they are asking, if you want to, like you said, ask them for help, beautiful, but really respect, it's their path. And I like to say, stay in your own lane.
Right. There's a
it's not
lot you can do. And again, we go back to my model of the big ball around us. We're in the center of this big ball of reality, which is also your present moment. It's your personal field of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you sit there and become sensitive, you realize, if you let it expand, that other people are actually inside your reality,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in theirs. So we have mutually contained each other.
Right.
And so and any possible potential reality that you might like to create, like more clients say, that reality is in your reality as a potential. It's like a little bubble that's floating there. I often see these like little soap bubbles floating around in our field, like they're transparent and you can see into them, and they have little movies going on inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's any kind you want.
Yeah.
But they're all right in the present moment with you. And all you have to do is change your frequency and start to go in and tune into that reality, and then go up close to it and almost like put your hands on the outside of the bubble and adjust your frequency to that level. And you'll pass through the outside of the bubble and into that reality, and you can feel it.
So, yeah. So as you're saying this, what's coming up for me, I'm just like, wow, that sounds so beautiful and easy, right?
Yeah.
Yet, I know for me, it's like, yeah, well, Penny, that's great, but I got to do something. I got to take some sort of action to say, again, let's say for a lot of my listeners, they are entrepreneurs and let's say they do want more clients and they see that inner bubble and they're going into that and they're really seeing it play out, all of that. But that's all they do? There's nothing else?
Well, first of all, remember that what you want is not separate from you.
Aha,
That's
there it
important.
is. Yes.
Because if you see something as separate from you, it requires then willpower, cleverness, and all the left brain stuff in order to seemingly cross that empty gap between you and the thing you want, when really that's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
There is no outside world. It's all in the bubble. So when you relax and say, oh, I already have it at a different frequency, so let me go and look at that bubble. And then see the principle of one of the universal principles is that we all have an inner energy blueprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything physical has come from, an energy pattern or counterpart. And so our reality comes out of a combination of our beliefs or contracted thoughts or our expanded thoughts and a willingness to flow and receive guidance in the moment from the higher levels, or our fears. It's a balance of love and fear, basically.
Yeah.
And so as you clear yourself of fear, your reality naturally goes to a higher frequency, and then everything works faster and better. All right. So that's a principle.
Yes.
Those little bubbles that we might visualize in our meditation or in our mind's eye are higher frequency potential realities. They're not in the future. They are with you now. And the whole thing is you want to create it in the inner energy blueprint first. And that's why we take it in our mind, in our imagination, and we go into that reality. It's almost like stepping into a movie. Saying, here I am in my new reality with the clients I wanted, and they're great clients. They love me, and they can pay me, all this great stuff. And I'm working on these kind of projects with them, and you flesh it out in your mind's eye so much that you involve all the senses. So now the body can get in on it. It's not an abstract thought that the body's sitting there twiddling its thumbs going, I wonder when I'm going to get to do something. So then you let the body in on the imagination, and that actually works with the reptile brain, and it starts to get you motivated. And you love that reality. And because it's nothing separate, then that reality will love you. And then you start to draw it toward you just through the power of attention, keeping your attention in it. And then it comes down in frequency, and it starts to materialize in your physical world. And as you come out of the vision of it and into the physical aspect, you might say to yourself then, well, what can I do as a task that is of the same frequency as my vision? Oh, I think I'll make a phone call, or I think I'll do some research online, or I think I'll go talk to a friend or go interview somebody who's successful, or, whatever. Some idea will come to you. Do it. Have fun doing it. When it's done, feel like I completed that. Look at that. I learned this. I got it. That was fun. Now relax and go back up to your bubble and your vision. Feel into it again. Remind yourself how fun it is. And then let yourself rock back down into the physical world and take another action. So you don't try to plan too far ahead now these days because everything's evolving so fast. So I call that the round trip. We're just, rocking in and out and checking out with the higher realms and the vision and the feeling of all that, and then bringing that feeling back down so the body can have fun with it. The body gets to do some tasks and enjoy things, and the mind focuses the vision into, action. And that's the way I know how to do it. I don't try to do everything all at once. I know it all exists. Yeah. And often what happens is the universe starts to do a lot of it for you. You do a task, but then you get synchronicities suddenly. People show up. You get invited to do something, or, you get fortuitous things that can happen that you don't have to make happen with your willpower. Yeah.
And it's funny because I will often have conversations with my clients about that that they're like, I'm on A and I want to get to Z and I want to go to Z now. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Let's break that down. We've got some smaller steps to go through first. And I love how you keep saying too that honestly, this has been something more new for me over these last couple of years about having fun in what you're doing. I come from a belief system. You've got to work really hard.
Right.
And it's got to be this force, push, hustle kind of thing, which just to me makes everything constrict. And I've learned over the years, like I love the people that I've worked with over these years and I love what I do. And there's been times where I'm like, why does it seem like it's so hard? And that's part of that belief system. And you keep coming back like, and it can be fun. It can actually be filled of joy. Let it be there and not try and do 30 things down the road. It's like, just be in this moment.
The more you project, the slower everything goes. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that I think ambition is a really outmoded idea. I think it's being replaced by enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That we don't
I like
need
that. Yeah.
That kind of willpower anymore. When you really start to understand how interconnected everything is, when you have an idea that you would like to materialize, like I get an idea for a new book, okay, I just start and I figure there's a lot of non-physical beings. I do work with non-physical beings. I say, well, okay, the writer's in the sky, come on in, let's all write this together. And I don't try to picture them, but I just get a feeling that I'm connected. And if I need to know something, they'll help me know it telepathically or pop an idea into my head.
Yeah.
And I do that, we're not alone, And so, we're talking about high achieving people, but what do we want to achieve except I think our destiny?
Yeah. I think it's reaching that potential. It's making changes in the world. It's making differences. That's where, to me, that achievement is. It's not about achieving it for others. I think that's what some women that I've worked with, that's the old belief system to prove themselves of being enough, is they go into that, I've got to achieve this thing to say that I'm a valid person. It's like, well, let's remove that framework and say, what do you really want to do in this world?
And that's kind of a reverse ego thing,
Yeah.
Because achievement often is connected a lot to ego. And whether you're trying to do great things by pleasing others, that's still like an ego thing, right? It's not centered in the soul.
Yeah.
But that's different from part of the loving nature that you have is just to be connected with people, have fun with people, have playmates, really, is what I think of it as. Like, if they're suffering, I can't play with them. And so I kind of want to help them get out of that if they're ready, right? So that I can play.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a past mentor. That's how she kind of words things at times. She's like, how are we going to play today? Or what are we going to do today? And it was more about this having that fun time to get curious and explore, which was funny. I'm like, that's a new way of saying things. And like you're saying,
well, it's like we have a new idea of success. When you integrate the non-physical reality with the physical. Yeah. And remember, the inner energy blueprint and the non-physical realm is inside the physical realm. It's not up in heaven somewhere. It is the inner reality that gives rise to the physical form. Yeah. It comes out of the middle, not down from above, really. So success then becomes something like, I said something about destiny, but I really think partly why we're here is to round ourselves out, to remember who we really are as souls. Yeah. And if we've been too masculine or too feminine or too passive or too aggressive or, either side of a polarity, we're trying to balance out the various polarities. Yes. And then see that there are many, 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 many polarities that create this huge circle of infinite possibilities that you can be. And why limit yourself? Yeah. And you get to a point after you've balanced out a number of those polarities that you say, well, gee, I can be anything really then.
Oh, how fun.
I'm both and I'm this and I'm this and I'm this and,
Love it. It kind of blows my mind. I'm sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, I've got to ask questions. Wait, what? Oh, I'm limitless. I'm this. What? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that I was going to mention earlier when you were talking about how I shifted out of one mode into more this mode, but it was that at a certain point I got kind of stuck and I didn't know what to do next. And then I looked back at my life and I thought, well, gosh, you did a lot of kind of crazy things. You took chances. And I said, but so what's my next courageous act? And from that point on, what would push beyond that comfort zone of what I've learned already? I've achieved this in a certain way because now I've learned these things and I have skills. What's next? That is not an easy thing necessarily, but a fun thing.
Yeah.
So, I'll write books. That was a thing that came after I'd been teaching for a while, and, online courses and all this stuff that's coming up now. It just new things keep coming along. And I think that's a good thing to think of, because also courage is, it's the heart.
Yeah,
the heart.
Absolutely.
I mean, cœur in French is the heart. That's where it comes from. I don't know. That keeps me kind of centered, I guess.
Yeah. I like to say, I work with heart-centered people because I think I'm more heart-centered. It's like listening and talking from your heart. We know that there's more connections from the heart up to the brain. We're gaining more and more information about how that all is connected, not just from the brain down to the heart.
Well, there are neurons in the heart that are like the ones in the brain, so the heart is a kind of brain.
Yes.
And I think people misunderstand the function of the heart too, because it's not about emotion.
Right.
It's about understanding and compassion, which is a little more neutral. But I always think of it as a sudden revelation of the perfect fit, of how everything fits together. It's also called the hierogamos, right? The divine marriage place, where opposite things come together and become one, and you see the larger reality there.
Beautiful.
And so heart is a very powerful place in that regard. Maybe when people say I have a broken heart, it's that you've lost that deep sense of oneness and harmony.
Yeah.
But it's not so much about sympathy. That's the second chakra down in your gut. It's about empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say heart-centered, it's about being in a place where you're really willing to understand anything, like the vulnerability of things, the good reason for things, the sanity inside of things that don't seem to make sense, and all that.
It now makes a lot more sense the way you're describing this too. It's kind of fitting like you do so well. It's that synthesizing of all this information you have too. I'm like, no wonder I've been, obsessed with hearts since I've been young. It explains a few things here for me. But yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I know you and I literally could talk, like I said earlier, for hours, and you may just have to come back on this show for sure. But before I share kind of your website and all that with people, I'm curious, what are some of the self-care things that you do for yourself, whether it's on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? What are some of the things that you do to take care of you?
I need space. So I like people, but I can't, handle too many for too long of a period. So if I'm out teaching or traveling or whatever, I will come home and I will retreat. And I do spend more time by myself, and I garden, work. I need nature. Yep. And I need baths. I take baths and walk. That kind of thing. I probably should get out and be a lot more active physically, but I don't seem to need to really too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I read books, try to get into different mindsets.
Beautiful. Yeah, it sounds like quite a few of the HSPs that I talk with, nature is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And the baths, I know for some, it's the having Epsom salts as well. That can really help. Yep.
Aromatherapy.
Yep. All of those things. Well, beautiful. Well, ladies, if you want to find out about, I'm going to have some links for Penny's books on the show notes, but her website is Penny Pearce, and her spelling of her name is Penney PEIRCE.com. And again, I'm going to have that in the show notes and how you can get a hold of her. But she's definitely got tons of books and how you can work with her and everything on her website as well. So Penny, I just want to say thank you so much for being on today and just sharing your wealth of knowledge and your teaching and everything that you have done over these years and continue to help raise the consciousness for everyone. So I just say thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, really. When you get on the wavelength with other people who are pretty much like you, it's just so effortless.
It is, isn't it? Quite fun. To sign up for my workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm and live a more balanced and connected life as a highly sensitive entrepreneur, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm.